Hello, hello, good evening. It's Monica from Life is Art, and it's Wednesday. Let's create, clearing a frog from my throat. We are going to be creating this evening. We're going to be using a um, designer series paper pack from the September to December mini catalog, and it is called, if I can find it, it's called Snowy Days, or Snowy Scenes. I was just looking at the reindeer days. Snowy Scenes, and you can see that it's sort of a little bit traditional Christmas in that there is red and green. There's Poppy Parade and Garden Green in there, but there's also some pinks and blacks and things, pool party, things to sort of freshen it up, make it fun, youthful, vibrant. And so I thought that would be a super collection to use on our card today. We're going to be creating a swing card. We're also going to be using one of the stamp sets from this catalog, which is called Peaceful Season. And it has lots of lovely sentiments for the outside and inside, lots for the inside of your winter cards. So let's get started. I see that Deborah is watching. Good evening, Deborah. And if you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. If you're watching later on replay, you can say replay or drop any kind of comment. All right, so we're going to start out with the base for our card, which is going to look very familiar. A piece of cardstock. This happens to be Poppy Parade, which is one of the coordinating colors for the Snowy Scenes collection. And this has been cut to 11 inches by 4¼ Now, if you're one of those people who likes to scribble down the dimensions, if you miss anything, don't worry, because when I post the pictures and when I fill in the description on the YouTube video, then all the dimensions will be there. So this is 11 by 4¼ and we're going to do some scoring on this. Not hard scoring. We're going to do some simple scoring with our Simply Scored scoring board. So we're going to put this on here. We're going to score along this 11-inch side. And we're going to score at 2¾ Hey, Lynn, nice to see you're watching. Good evening. So we're scoring along the 11-inch side at 2¾ and at 5½, which is our half-inch, halfway mark on our 11-inch piece. And that's it. That's all the scoring we need to do. So this is a fancy fold or fun fold type of card, but it's not terribly difficult, which is nice. Sometimes we just need something that's a little different. There are going to be a few little intricate bits as we go along, but not too many. All right, now we want to fold on these score lines. We're going to start with the main center score line, that 5½ line, and we're going to fold it with the bump side to the inside. So the bump side of our score line to the inside. Make sure everything lines up. Crease that down. And then we're going to come over to this side where we have that 2¾ inch score line. Now this time we are not folding with the bump side to the inside. We're actually folding the dip side, but that's just because we're folding it back on itself. And so we're going to fold that back to the center crease there and line it up and then crease it down. That's it. And so now you have basically a Z fold card, accordion style. And this is kind of very similar to a lot of ways we start a card. And then what we do to it at this point is what makes the difference, okay? So we're going to be creating a swing card. And if you've ever seen a swing card, you'll kind of have an idea of where we're going. But if you haven't seen one, then just hold on and we will get there. The next thing I want to do is to bring in some of the gorgeous DSP from the Snowy Scenes collection. This one is probably my favorite. I've been sort of holding back on using this because I just love it so much, but I have used it a few times. So this is the one that has all these cute little houses, and as you know from my posting the last few weeks. I am obsessed with little houses. I like little houses and little windows and little doors, and they're all just so cute. Between houses and cows, it's a toss up, and chickens. Can't forget the chickens. So if this had cows and chickens on it, oh my gosh, it would be like the greatest paper ever. So this piece has been cut to 2.5 by 4 inches, and we're going to go ahead and adhere this to this front panel. And I'm going to put a little extra adhesive on here. So I'm going to put some there, and then I'm going to just add a couple more strips of adhesive. And you will see in a minute or two why I am doing that. Let me grab my pick tool here to help me remove the backings off of these. Look at that. Me chucking it right in the trash can beside me. Usually I throw it off to the left, and then I have to gather it up later. Today, new leaf. I keep saying that, but you know, someday it'll stick. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this to the front panel, and we're actually going to scooch it a little bit close to that center fold right there. Okay, so it's going to be just a little bit closer to that center fold, not by a lot, just a little. Just a smidgen, just for fun. So now we have that gorgeous paper on there, and you can see how it's picking up that Poppy Parade in those cute little houses. Poppy Parade is a little bit different from Real Red and Cherry Cobbler. Let me see, I think I actually have Cherry Cobbler right here. So up against Cherry Cobbler, you can see quite a difference in color. Real Red... Let's see if I have some kicking around. Here's a sample of Real Red, or is that Poppy Parade 2? That's Poppy Parade 2. Never mind. The Real Red is a lot closer than the Cherry Cobbler, but Poppy Parade just has that little extra pop to it. And I think that's super fun. It's a little bit brighter of a color than the Real Red, but they're both gorgeous. Okay, next we're going to bring in a die cut. And I'm going to be using the Nested Essentials dies, which have these fun shapes on there. We've got this little tag, we've got the rounded rectangle, and then we've got this long, interesting shape. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hexagon. Yes, hexagon. It takes me a second. But we're going to be using this rounded rectangle, and we're going to use the largest size. So just going to pull that out. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to die cut right about here, but we only want to die cut right here and only on this outside flap. So we don't want these other two panels die cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit here and we're going to carefully place where this die is going. And I had in my possession, there we go, some washi tape. So let's grab a couple little snippets of some donut washi tape. I mean, if you're gonna have washi tape, might as well have donuts on it, right? Do you have some random washi tape sticking around in your craft space that you use for doing dies? Yeah. All right, so let's line this up on a line. Line it up on a line on the mat. And we're going to measure up because we want it this kind of centered. We're going to come up, let me see. I had it written down and then I changed pages. We're going to come up 7 3/4. Sorry, lost my piece of paper. 7/8 of an inch from the bottom. So that's halfway between 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch. So right about there. And we're going to position that. And then we want to come in 1 3/16 from the side. So that is like 1 and almost 1/4. But mostly I'm just eyeballing it. Then I'm going to remove my ruler and just see. Does that look good to me? Does that look like things are centered? And I'm pretty happy with it where that is. So now I'm going to apply my washi tape to hold that in place but only on that panel. And this is where things get interesting. We're going to grab the big shot here. And I want to, usually I don't put it right in the middle of the screen, but I want you to see what I'm doing because this end is going to be important. So I want to make sure it's in the camera. I'm just going to give it half a second to catch up. And yes, I think you'll be able to see. So I have my sandwich, however you're going to do your sandwich. And I'm going to take this card and carefully open it up. But all I want to cut is just this. I don't want to go past my score line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the end of my plate right here. And most die cutting and embossing plates, trying to get on the screen here, have a little beveled edge at the end where it kind of drops off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up that score line right along that beveled edge. And where it drops off, it won't cut past there because there's nothing squishing it together at that point, right? Because the plastic has fallen away and now it's moved all over the place. So let me just visually line it back up again. And we're going to add our second plate on top, and I'm going to line up the beveled edges like so. Okay, now usually we say put this in on an angle, but because of what I'm cutting, I can't put it in on an angle because it won't work that way. But what should happen now is this part should cut, and this part that's just kind of tapering off like a ramp should stay uncut. So let's run it through. Bring it back this side because I've run out of room on the other side to take it out because I've got my tower of tools over there. And moment of truth. Just put that out of the way. Let's see if we manage to cut just this part. It's looking good from the back side. And obviously there's no part that's going to come off because we did not cut the full die, right? So this piece is staying attached, and that's what we want. I'm going to set that aside. So now you can see that we successfully cut our little flap. So instead of being like this, it's now free floating, and that's what we want. We want it to actually stick out like that because you can see that as I open and close my card, you see how that flap sticks out? So when I'm looking at it like this, I see this red side. And then when I fold it like this, I see the red side with the paper attached. And that's what kind of gives us that swing action, right? Where that panel, you see the front side, then you see the back side. Just like swinging back and forth on a swing. If I held it this way, it would look even more swing-like, right? So that is the base for our swing card. Alrighty, so it's just a little bit of smoke and mirrors with the die cut machine that gets us that little piece. And sometimes I think that kind of throws people off. They look at it, they think, oh, that's going to be too hard. It's just taking your time and thinking about how it's going to go through the machine. So just make sure that everything you don't want cut is outside of that beveled edge and doesn't go through the machine. And then this part should cut just fine, no matter what shape you use. Alrighty, so let's start adding some decoration elements to this card. We're going to start out with another piece of the Designer Series paper, and that is this beautiful sort of uneven plaid that looks like it's just hand-drawn, different thicknesses of lines, and it has the beautiful poppy parade in there, plus some of the petal pink. Looks lovely. And this piece is going to go on the inside of our card, and I can see right now that I did not cut the right size. Always, inevitably. So it's supposed to be 5¼ by 4 inches. And you know what? I wrote down 5½, and that's what I cut. So let me just fix that to 5¼ by 4 inches so that when I type it in, I always have to take a minute to pause and fix that. Because when I type it into the computer later, you're all going to message me and say, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. Something's amiss. So let's just do a little trimmy trim. I'm going to trim this other end. 5 1/4. And I'm off the screen. I know, but you can see. I just took 1/4 inch off. It's all good. It's better to be too long than not long enough, right? Alrighty. So let's add some adhesive onto our 5 1/4 by 4-inch piece of plaid designer series paper. And then we're going to go ahead and adhere it to the inside of our card. Now the fun thing about this card, because we have that front that folds back on itself, it exposes some of the inside of our card, and that allows this fun pattern to be seen even when the card is closed, right? So we're kind of creating a frame around what's going to go in the center. But we want to make that frame even more so as we go along. And you'll see how we do that. On this panel on the front here, I've taken the same die from the Nested Essentials dies, and I have cut out a piece of basic white cardstock. Actually, I've cut 3 of these for this project. And so we're going to be attaching those to this panel. Now, when you put this down here like this, you may find that these don't line up. That is a-okay, because it's all going to be fine. Because when we go along here, we're going to put another panel on the back. Okay, so that's okay. And in fact, if we lined it up with that panel, it wouldn't fit right, okay? So we're going to line it up with this opening. Alrighty? So let's take this. What am I going to do with this? I forget now what I'm doing with this. We're going to take some die cut, or not die cut, fussy cut pieces from the designer series paper, and I have this cute little snow globe, which has the same kind of houses as this other pattern paper, but just in a little bit smaller, and it's like a little snow globe. I was going to say a shaker panel. It's not. You can make it into a shaker, I suppose, a really tiny shaker, but it's a little snow globe. So we're going to have that as one element on here, and because this is the outside of our card, we can pop it up with some dimensionals. So let's add a few dimensionals on here. A few, as in a whole ton. Probably way more than it's needed for a tiny little snow globe. And I just fussy cut this out of the pattern paper. We've got this gorgeous snowflake pattern on the back, which we're not going to see. We're not going to use even in this particular project. And one thing that you see me use all the time is a pair of tweezers, because that just helps me line things up, because I can kind of get a better view of all the edges, and the only thing that's obstructing is that tiny little bit. Much better than having my big hands in the way, and then I can't see anything. So that helps with placement. Good tip there. Okay, I want to add a sentiment onto this panel, and so I am going to be using the Peaceful Season stamp set, and I'm going to be using this one that says Love from Our Home to Yours, because I think that works perfectly with these little houses. And so I've decided that I want to do that with some heat embossing. So I've got a piece of black cardstock, and this is just out of my bin of scraps. So it's been kicking around for a while, and I just pull it out when I need a little bit of black cardstock. So every so often they might look slightly different because it's just whatever's in the bin of scraps. I've got my Versamark ink, I've got my sentiment loaded up on my block, and I have my white embossing powder all ready to go, my heat tools plugged in. And this is one of those things that you kind of have to get all ready before you start. I'm also going to grab this little pouch that takes a little bit of static off my paper, rub that on there, And I'm using a great big chunk even though I only need a little strip because I can trim it down later, and this will keep the heat tool from heating my fingers when they don't need to be heated. So I'm just going to stamp with the Versamark ink and then sprinkle with the embossing powder. You've seen me emboss many times, and it's always fun. It always makes me happy. Just give a little tap tap. If you see any little stray bits that might have gathered, you can flick them off. You can use a little brush to do that, or just your finger. And then we can go ahead and dump the excess back on in. Very handy to have scrappy paper kicking around in your craft room. And then let's bring in our heat tool. I'm gonna move that out of the way. Don't want my dimensionals to melt. And heat it up. Doesn't take too long, but it's such a fun effect. And I might have actually pushed a little too hard when I stamped my sentiment, because it looks a little smudgy. Not smudgy, smooshy. You do have to be have a delicate hand, because if those little tiny letters kind of squidge down too hard when you're stamping, then that's where the Versamark goes, and that's where the embossing powder sits. Well, I think I got that all good. See how nice and warm that was already? That didn't take long at all. Now I'm going to get rid of that extra little bit of the anti-static powder by rubbing it on my jeans. And there we go. Just going to grab my little photo trimmer wherever it went. Oh, I'm looking through my drawer for it because that's where it usually is, and I already had it prepared and sitting on the top of my desk. Yep. One of those days. We're just going to trim so that we have a little bit of the black all the way around. Like that. Looks pretty good. And I'm also going to trim down the ends a little bit, just with my scissors. Like that. I almost want to trim it just a little skinnier on the bottom side, because there seems to be more cardstock on the bottom side. And if you don't trust yourself to do this with scissors, you can just leave it. You could just leave it, but no, Monica doesn't leave it. Monica's being silly. Or you could just put it back in the trimmer and trim it that way. Okay, so let's add this panel to the front of our card. We're going to put some adhesive on it, like so. Take our backings off. There we go. Oops. Let's not stick it to our mat. All right, so we want to line it up so that it matches this end of the frame, because that end of the frame can't change. But this end of the frame can be wherever it ends up. Okay, so now you can see there's a little bit extra hanging over there, but that's okay. We're never opening our card past that bit, so it never has to swing through that opening. Okay, but you do want it to line up on this side. Then we're going to take our little sentiment strip. We're going to add some dimensionals to it. These are actually some little strips from the strips. What are they called? The foam strip whatevers. I could take a dimensional and just cut it in half, or use the minis, but I don't have any minis, and these strips were already cut off of the ones that come in big long strips. So that works perfectly for me. I'm also going to, and I'm just putting it on either end, because we popped up this little snow globe here. If we want to add something going across it, which I'm going to, we need to pop up the ends so that it lays straight across. But we don't want any foam in the middle, because that middle bit already has foam under it. So now again, I'm going to use my tweezers to help me with this. And we're going to try and center this on our little snow globe. Love from our home to yours. There we go. Squishy, squishy. I always love how it kind of just boop, boop, boops around with the squishy underneath. So there's the front of our card. We are going to add a little something extra, but we want to go to the inside now to do a little bit more. All right. So our next step is to add in some contrasting cardstock and the panel that we are going to write our sentiment on. And so these are going to end up centered in here, hidden behind this panel. And what I want to do is I want to round my corners of my black cardstock so that they kind of follow the shape of everything else that's happening. So this cardstock has been cut to 4 inches by 3 inches, and these little die cuts are 3 inches by 2 3/8, about there. So this is 4 inches by 3 inches, and all I'm going to do is I'm not going to use a corner rounder or anything like that. I'm just going to use the die cut piece that I have, line it up, and then just cut around the corner. Just using my scissors. And then I move it to the next corner. You want to make sure you get it lined up nice. So just tap, tap till you get it right in that corner. And then just follow right along like that. This is a good way to practice doing rounded corners without a corner rounder, because you've got something to follow. Oh, I went crooked. Let's line it up. And when you're doing these, you kind of want to start with your scissors parallel to the one edge and then go around the corner and end up parallel with the other edge. And that way you know you've gone the full distance. Last corner. If I used a corner rounder for this, my corner rounder might not be the exact same kind of round as the die cut, right? So I might not get the exact same kind of round, and it might look a little odd. Now I want to add these two pieces together. So I'm going to add a little adhesive on the back. And I want to kind of center this, but I've got black cardstock on a black mat. And that does things to my eyes, which means that I can't really judge the edges very well. So what I'm going to do, put something a little bit lighter underneath it, help myself with my tweezers, and then center it this way. And yes, I am eyeballing it, but that's okay. I'm just going to do my best efforts to get it centered. Okay, now you may think it's odd that I'm centering it in this sequence, but trust me, it works. So we're going to center it on our black cardstock first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our card base. We're going to put some adhesive on the back of this. And fingers crossed, because, you know, when I do this not on camera, it works. But you just never know. And somebody's probably watching right now going, don't jinx it by saying that. Lynn is loving this card. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to take my panel, and I'm not sticking it down yet. I'm lining it up with this die cut that's right here. Okay? I'm lining it up so those two white panels are one on top of the other. And I'm going to flip it over and close gently. I'm not going to give it a whole lot of squishy because I want to make sure that nothing shifted. Now that I've been assured that nothing shifted, I can stick it down. But now that should just line up ticky-boo. So you want to line up those two panels and then open that side up and bring this side to meet it. Gently, then check, then stick it. Because anything can happen. It could go really wonky in that process. So don't push it down. Just have it just touch enough. And that's sometimes where you have to be careful about liquid versus tape and all that, because sometimes like the little tape zippy runner things don't stick. If you they don't stick. But some liquid glues, as soon as you touch them, it's down. Other liquid glues, you can kind of, squizzle around a little bit. I know, weird words I use, but that's just how it is. All right. Now I want to put a sentiment on the inside of my card, and I want to deal with this sort of menagerie that's happening over here. So I'm going to bring in another die cut piece, same as before, the basic white. Remember I said we cut 3 of them. Should use the proper side. And I'm going to add an inside sentiment from the Peaceful Season stamp set. So I've got this one here that says, thinking of you with warm feelings and a wish for all the merriest, which I think is very nice. I'm going to use Garden Green, which is, again, one of the coordinating colors for the Snowy Scenes paper pack. We're going to ink it up in the Garden Green. And I'm going to scooch closer to myself. Scooching and squizzling. Hopefully center it on there. Stamp it on. Lovely. Close that up. Bring our card back in. And oops, that's the finished one. Don't give away. That's spoiler alert. You didn't see anything, right? Spoiler alert. I have the 2 cards sitting side by side. I'm going to add some adhesive on the back of the panel that we just stamped. Like that. Take my backing off. All of you who use tape runners are like, with the tape runner, you don't have to do that whole step. I know. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that this die cut lines up with that die cut so that everything looks hunky-dory. When we close it, we don't have any weird edges hanging out. Nothing hanging out. No muffin tops on our card today. All right, now a little extra for the inside. One of the pretty patterns from this paper pack has little penguins in it. And as much as I like little houses and little windows and doors and little cows and little chickens, I also like little penguins. I think I just like everything. So we're going to add a couple little penguins because it's talking about thinking of you with warm feelings and a wish for all the merriest. So let's take this little guy, and I've just fussy cut it with my scissors from the pattern paper. I did leave a little edge around, a little halo of the background paper. And I know it's not white, but that doesn't matter. Let's add some adhesive to this. And now this little guy has a red hat, and the other one has a blue hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the little guy with the red hat over here, just along the side. I don't want him covering up too much of my panel, because remember, this is where we're going to write our message. And if we're sending it to somebody we like, because we're sending them warm feelings, so I'm going to assume you're sending it to somebody you like, you want to have enough room to send them a personal greeting as well. And then this little guy has a little pool party hat. See that? So cute with his little feet. Aww. And so he's going to go over here on the Poppy Parade, kind of lined up with the other one. And that way he'll kind of show up a little better with that bit of contrast between the Poppy Parade, as this one would kind of blend in a bit more. But there we go. We've got some cute little penguins, and then it's a matter of adding a little bling, because I don't think we can rightfully say we finished a card without a little bit of sparkle on there. So I have the Irridescent Adhesive-backed discs, and look it up here under the flap. This section of red discs is actually Poppy Parade color, and look how shiny and iridescent-y these are. I hope the lights are picking up the glow off those, but they're very flat. They are like flat discs. Let me hold it up here. Can you see how flat that is? It's like cardstock thickness. Very flat. So you can put it on the inside of a card or on the outside of card and add no, like it's not as much bulk as dimensionals. It's so flat. So for those of you who are trying to reduce bulk, say you're shipping cards overseas or to another country, then you can add these and not have to worry about your card not fitting through, I always say, the little slot that they test your cards with when you're figuring out how much postage you need. So we're going to add just a couple little trios of these iridescent discs in the Poppy Parade color, just for a little blingity bling, because, you know, how could we not? So there we have it, our swing card started out with a Poppy Parade base, then we did our funky Z folding and added in our pattern paper with those cute little houses. We also added in the die cut to cut out this part to make this fun swing action happen. Really, it's not a very hard mechanism, is it? You're just cutting a little flap is all you're cutting, but it has such a cool effect. Then we added on our die cut pieces some fussy cut bits from the pattern paper, which match oh so nicely. A little bit of heat embossing, and then of course some contrast cardstock. And the black looks really good with this because if you notice, there are black details, or actually it might be early espresso, but close enough, in our little houses. And then of course our little sentiment inside from Peaceful Seasons, a couple of little penguins who are enjoying the snowy weather. And there we go. Our fun swing card stands up nice. It can stand up either way, fully opened, partially closed, whatever you want. But I think that is a super fun card. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that come together. If you create a card like this, be sure to snap some photos of it and share it in the comments when I post my pictures, and then we can all see and be inspired by your artwork as well. I love to see what you guys create. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you again soon. Toodaloo. Bye.